Oh, this is the Warren Mamdani ad. Yeah, yeah, people are talking about whether or not it's time to forgive her, to drop the grudge. What do you think, folks?
Nobody disagrees with that, Senator, but raising taxes in order to do it?
Good. Oh, dear, are you worried that billionaires are going to go hungry? You know, I watched this race, read all the stories about Cuomo going in and bending the knee to the billionaires, right? Adams going in, bending the knee to the billionaires. And nothing about you bending the knee to the billionaires. And I thought, billionaires aren't going to like that.
Actually, a hard as like ad, though, design-wise.
My view is we're running out of time here. It is time to get universal child care. It's why I wanted to come here, to be with you. You inspire me. When you tell the people of New York City, we can do better, we can make this a more affordable city, and when you make child care a key part of that, I'm in all the way. So how come you won?
You know, we showed that organized people beats organized money. But you know, let me ask you a question, because you've been at the forefront of this fight for childcare for a long time. People have told you for years that this kind of a vision is unrealistic. And that's a lot of what we hear when we talk about freezing the rent, making buses free, universal child care. They say it's not going to happen. What do you say to those critics? What have you said?
You ever heard the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau?
Yes, I have.
Do you know what everybody told me about that agency? Impossible, can't be done. Ask for something small. You know, my view on this is ask for what actually fixes the problem and then get out there and fight.
You know, when Andrew Cuomo gave Elon Musk $950-odd million in tax credits, there weren't the same questions. Whether
where
it was
was
realistic
everybody
or
saying, whoa, is that realistic? But when we're talking about what is truly our most precious resource, you want to build a successful city, you want to build a successful nation, what should you be investing in? You invest in your babies, you invest in your little kids, you invest in the people who are going to do the work in this city.
Warren has always been really consistent on this and advocating for childcare, you know, as like a priority, which, I mean, it's a good point to hit Republicans on as well, because Republicans love the LARP that they're pro-family and pro, like, return with a V, Western birth rates, et cetera, et cetera. But the fact that, like, having multiple children is a career death sentence in the modern economy, and daycare costs approximately $1 billion a day, does not help with that. I think the main reason people are fucking less is because there's better shit to do now that they've invented like Fruit Ninja or whatever. Now that they've invented, I don't know, Smosh and Game Grumps. That's why people aren't. It's just people are too busy doing other stuff. But if we want to get the numbers up to like at least a solid 2.1, we're gonna need extremely subsidized daycare.
Politics is ultimately about our values. Our budgets are about our values. So if you really think all we're supposed to be doing is helping the billionaires have a little smoother path through life, then fine, vote for Cuomo. But if you actually think what our job is to give our kids a chance, that's what this is all about.
What did Elizabeth Warren do? In 2020, in the Democratic primaries, she very publicly backstabbed Bernie Sanders with a wide range of attacks that centered primarily on an alleged conversation that she had with Bernie Sanders, where Bernie Sanders claimed that a woman couldn't be the president. In all likelihood, what Bernie Sanders probably said, because it's consistent with stuff that he said in public for decades, is that it's difficult for a woman to be the president because people are sexist. Like, sexism at the voting booth is an impediment. After all, this was 2020. Hillary Clinton just lost to Donald Trump last election. So, you know, Kamala Harris would go on to lose to Trump in the next election, you know. I mean, it would fly in the face of everything Bernie Sanders has ever said and believed. For him, like, privately, he like the door closes and he's like, no, actually, I just think women are like, too stupid to be president. The American people are tired of women. You know, I just don't think it's real. But she really elevated this. I mean, she talked to media outlets about it. She brought it up in the debate stage. She refused to shake his hand. And she was the next most progressive candidate on the primary debate stage. So she caused a schism where people who might have otherwise been pulled over to Bernie when she dropped out, she instead came a rift. Now, she isn't why Bernie lost the primary. Bernie was going to lose the 2020 primary no matter what. I don't think she made him lose. But I do think, like, that's pretty bad, man. Like, that was a huge left schism caused seemingly by her dishonesty and belligerence. I just have a hard time believing her at her word. So Latin American-based countries are less misogynistic and hate women less. There are lots of women in presidential positions in Latin America. You know, interestingly, there is some truth to that. Yeah, like, for instance, a bunch of black representatives were elected immediately after the end of slavery, like a huge wave of them. But people back then, on average, were a lot more racist than they are today. It's kind of complicated, but my feeling is that, like, there is a difference between... There are different types of sexism. And I think that in America, we are, how do I put this? In some ways, America is not a sexist country at all, relative to other countries. Like, America is a relatively progressive country in a lot of ways. But in other ways, I think that there's an undercurrent of sexism that is normalized to the point of invisibility, and that affects people who otherwise even consider themselves to be, like, progressive, you know? Like... So on one hand, you have an environment where, like, maybe a near record number of people are in favor of, like, women's liberation on paper, or like women's rights or women's suffrage, but then a larger number of people might think that women aren't cut out for the job of the presidency. I don't know. It's pretty complicated, but yeah, we do have a real opposition to female leadership in this country. And it is kind of weird that there are countries that are, like, in every other way seemingly less progressive than us, but they have more female leadership. I don't really know. Like, I'll put it another way, I guess. Brazil, very complicated racial politics in Brazil, right? In some ways, less racist than America. In other ways, more racist than America. And it's just complicated. It's just, like, flat complicated, right? I don't know.
I think that running a campaign that talks directly to people about how unaffordable their lives have become, and that, by golly, you're going to put your shoulder to the wheel to change that. You speak to a lot of people. Maybe you don't have all those millions of dollars and the billionaires backing, but you have a lot of people who are putting a lot of trust in you, a lot of hope. And I want to see this happen.
Vosh has never been to Latin America or the Middle East or Africa talking about sexism in other countries. Do you have to visit, do you need to visit an African country to claim that the countries there might have issues with sexism? I'm not entirely sure if I understand what would I have to do to go there? Would I need to, like, talk to 100 people and sort of aggregate their positions? Can I not go off polling data? Have you been to America?
We decided to do this together.
Good. Maybe you could practice your bending the knee.
Yes.
I think that's it.
Yes.
That's it. Come on. There you go.
I don't think I've seen Mamdani wear a green suit before. Maybe I'm just not remembering. Ooh, classic mistake though. Probably shouldn't wear the socks that are the same color as your dress shoes.
Please.
Or wait, are those boots? Those might be boots. I could be wrong.
Good. I like that.
Oh, those are boots. Okay. It's hard to tell. Nice. Hey, Vosh, I realize it would take time and maybe isn't worth doing, but I think explaining what makes it complicated would make the thing you say more interesting. Thank you. I appreciate your sage advice that me elaborating on my points might provide further context. Unfortunately, I'm not an expert on racial politics in Brazil. Any opinion I give on the subject would be like a foreigner's, like half-informed, like, okay, so from what I've heard, it's not something I'm an expert on. Bigotry is really, really, really complicated, like it's the same, like it's so much more nuanced than people think, right? It's the same reason why Latin voters have been skewing towards Trump. It's the same reason why a significant number of internet white supremacists are like people from the Philippines or Mexico or India, where it's like, dude, you're not even like remotely close. Like there are people in Mexico who are white passing, or white, like depending on your definition, I guess, Hispanic white. In India, maybe a few, but there are a lot of white supremacists in India. It's all very complicated stuff. It's all very psychological. It's all very contextual, and the environment you grow up in. I don't know. Everyone's the main character of their own life. People think of these as like identity markers, that in a way that relates more to their personal life story than it does like broader socioeconomic descriptors. For example, think of how many people there are that live in the suburbs, make $200,000 a year, but they drive a Ford F-150 around and act and try to look like they're working class, like poor people, Like they try to act like they're out there roughing it when they just are a manager in their dad's construction company, but they pretend that they're like a, you know, salt of the earth worker. You mean LARPers? Well, I think somebody who's maybe more educated on this subject than I am would argue that to an extent we're all LARPers. We grasp at these like idioforms as they appear in media and culture, and we identify with the ones that relate to us. But that doesn't always like gel with what society ascribes to us, you know? And I don't just mean this in like a choose your gender kind of way. What I mean is like you might look at a set of characteristics and think, oh, that's me, but other people might disagree with you, you know? What is whiteness, or what does it even mean to be like a masculine or feminine? You might have an idea that differs from the norm. We can't all like, well, what am I? Let me just go aggregate all data on all human beings and then decide. And even then, you're only deciding within your community, right? How many people are you asking for their opinion on what counts as being like a rough out working class kind of guy? Do you ask the opinions of people in your neighborhood? What about your country? By the standards of somebody who works in Bangladesh, I imagine that nobody in America would count as a true, like, rough and tough working class guy, right? There are people out there carrying their, you know, everything they own to bindle. You know, they're cooking their daily meals in what we would consider to be camping gear, you know? And then they see over here in America, there are people making $40,000 a year who are like, you know, the poor trodden working class. They would laugh at that. It's all contextual is what I'm trying to say. For example, in the black community, there's so much contention surrounding what's considered light skin versus dark skin. Yeah. I mean, it's like if to a white person, you know, for the most part, black people are black people, and to black people, there are more subcategories. It's, you know, it's a whole thing. Anyway, what were we watching here? I don't know. Elizabeth Warren doing this whole runabout with Mamdani makes me happy. One of the big reasons it makes me happy as well is because Mamdani does have like a significant skew of support from men. So, you know, acknowledging sort of in-group bias, I feel like getting a little bit more feminine energy in the campaign might sort of diversify his coalition a little bit. People are too gatekeeping about what's working class, IMO. At the end of the day, most people are working class because most people work. But as an identifier or as an aesthetic, people tend to group themselves into these idioforms. Why? Like, there are two sets of working class people, and one of them wears Carhartt, and the other one looks up YouTube videos on how to dress like old money. In reality, they have the same income, and neither of them are going to off-road rally shows or to yachts for parties. In reality, they're just looking at identifiers that because they find them aesthetically satisfying, you know? You're the latter. I'm the one dressing like old money in my trucker jacket and baseball cap. I hate the old money aesthetic. It was a joke. I ain't laughing. White name. Pay up. Your Bernie voice killed me so much. Thanks. It's the only impression I can do well. I used to have a good Trump impression, but it like bled away. I think it bled away when I met my partner and I became happy. There was something about that, you know, it fixed me and I can't do the impression anymore. Did you see Warren agree the party should go in a democratic socialist direction? Didn't Elizabeth Warren stand and clap when Donald Trump said this country will never be a socialist country back in 2019?
Progressive social. Is this what the party should look like?
Yes.
Democratic Party
You bet. The Democratic Party needs to stand up and be clear. We are the party that fights for affordability for working families. That means child care. That means housing. It means health care. It means making this country work better for the working people who make this country work.
All right, last question.
People are allowed to learn? That's true. I don't think that Elizabeth Warren is like one of the more insincere, you know, senators. I guess I should say of people like in this orbit, I feel like she's one of the ones who I could reasonably believe might be moved over time, you know? She's not evil like, yeah, a lot of Democrats. She's not Schumer or whatever. She said she's a capitalist through and through. Yeah, but like, democratic socialism also isn't a real thing. Okay, stop with the essay posting, please. Good Lord. Democratic socialism is like a Bernie Sanders term to try to distinguish him and his positions from the Soviet Union or whatever. It's not like a real thing, you know? Obviously, if Bernie Sanders became president and got to do everything he said he was going to do, the country would still be capitalist. Capitalism also doesn't mean anything specific. It's complicated. Democratic socialism is a uniquely American term and is de facto just social democracy. In fairness, there are tons of European politicians and parties that call themselves socialist, and in reality, what they mean is like welfare capitalism. That's basically every socialist party in Europe. There are very few actual socialists. Just me. As Disco Elysium said, all the real socialists are dead. That's true.